Good morning, everybody, or I guess good afternoon for several of you out there. Welcome to our Full Compass webinar series, another one in a long-running series of webinars that we're bringing to you in these times that everything has gone to the virtual online training and so forth. So my name is Jim Ripp. I am the moderator today. I'm the manager of technical training and sales development here at Full Compass. And joining us today is Casey Commons from Listen Technologies. He's the regional sales manager there. We have a great subject today with Wi-Fi solutions with the Listen Everywhere system. So real quick, I want to get past some of the housekeeping issues here. Don't forget that you have a question feature that you can use anytime during our presentation today. Go ahead and type those questions in. I will ask them, most of them at the end of the session. If some of them are very important, I may ask them right in the middle. I may cut in and do that. There's a recording available of this presentation afterwards, so if you have to duck out partway through, no problem. You will receive a copy of that as well, and we will also post that up on our YouTube channel. Also, very short survey at the end. If you could do us a favor and fill that out, that really helps us to bring you great subjects in the future. And without any further ado, let's bring Casey online. Casey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much, Jim. Thanks for joining on today, everybody else out there as well in virtual meeting land. So
yes, I'm
excited to be here.
I'm coming from a very humid Madison, Wisconsin. It's been rainy and hot the last couple of days. Where are you coming to us from?
I am also in a humid area right now of Philadelphia. Originally from, I traveled from eventually the Bay Area to Utah over my life, as the biography says, to Philly. So I've been here for about 9 years, and suffice it to say, I still can't really get down being okay with humidity. So good thing I'm inside today.
Give me 20 below and I'm good.
We'll go like a true Madison tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody can see your accolades here. I like to dig just one level behind what we can see here, and I see that you got your start in live sound industry. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got started.
So it's actually, being in Utah, I tried to do the whole thing where in my teen years, I had a couple friends that were really good musicians. I tried to pick up, I took up piano lessons growing up, and then I moved into bass and then tried to tinker around with some other instruments. And I realized I was never going to have the acumen to play in a band, especially with how my friends were. And so I took up to live sound. I got my first little Pro Tools set up when I was like 19. And I tried to kind of divvy around with that. But then, I was like, I could actually do this. So I didn't do it, obviously, as a professional level. I've been at Listen since I was 20 years old. So, but you know what, it was actually kind of a funny thing because that was something where I was still very, very passionate about. And one day I dreamt of having my own recording studio. But my brother is actually born profoundly deaf. So when I heard of Listen Technologies, convenient enough, I was like, okay, I know them from some of the professional audio stuff, but I also am personally tied to people that are hard of hearing. So that's kind of what ultimately led me to Listen, just because I had that coalition of both passion. Well, I had the passion of what I was doing plus the background of my brother. So it seemed only right that I ended up at Listen Technologies. So started at inside sales. I was probably like our 10th employee 14 years ago, and kind of worked my way around the company. But it's been a good ride for sure. Definitely.
Excellent. Well, it's good to have a fellow piano player, bass player online with us.
I've actually had a lot of more experience with that in the last couple of months, to be told.
So Casey, I'm going to hand things over to you. I'm going to duck out here. I will be listening in the background. And like I say to everybody out there, if there's anything, a real important question that pops up, I will jump into Casey here and ask him right away. Otherwise, we'll wait to the end for the questions. All right, all yours, Casey.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jim. And again, so obviously, if you guys are familiar, the questions part is right there on the little go-to bar On my side, it's the right side. I know it's personal preference, but definitely feel free to ask questions as they go along. I know we were going to talk about Wi-Fi networks and everything like that. If you asked me 2 or 3 years ago what the difference of a static IP versus a DHCP protocol was, I would have looked at you like you had 9 heads. So I've kind of learned a lot, but what I realized is we're in that level now where when we converge audio with IT, there's a lot of questions. So there isn't any question too stupid whatsoever. Trust me. So as we go on, so I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with Listen Technology. I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that are. We've been around for 21 years. Of those 21 years, it's basically been assisted listening and language interpretation products. And so we really want to convey the message that what we really want to do is, because we are starting to get beyond just live assisted listening type applications or live interpretation applications. And that's kind of the premise of what brought us all here today. But we have a kind of a de facto model we've really coined for a lot of our solutions in the last year. And really, it says it right there on the screen. It's to be able to deliver the right experiences at the right time, at the right place, seamlessly. So I'll kind of get into how we tied into that before. So again, there's my mug. I mean, if it was live now, my hair would be a little bit more. But I already brought it up a minute ago about my tenure at Listen Technologies. And I think that's important to kind of resonate here is because, again, still to this day, most people believe us to be an assisted listening company, specifically pertaining to those that are hard of hearing. And that's still what we do. So for the ones that are kind of unfamiliar with it, we make basically from 21 years ago, a body pack wireless receiver. And it's either on an RF or an infrared band. And then we also have something known as induction loop that goes directly to someone's hearing aid. And essentially, and again, kind of this is why I wanted to bring up my tenure in the 14 years I've been talking about assisted listening and why it's essential, why it brings value to a lot of places. I kind of get some of the same rebuttals, some of which go along the lines of, we don't need assisted listening. I just put this rig up here. Do you know the decibel levels this gets? This could blow off the windows off of a Boeing 737, right? And so I see stuff like that, or I hear stuff like that, and I hear a couple other things. And realistically, why these technologies exist, why we have the body pack type receivers with headphones, is because if someone's hard of hearing, whether it's just degradation of hearing loss as they get older, or if they're like kind of like my brother, where they were born with natural hearing loss, it's all about sound intelligibility. So the louder, going back to my friend with the loudspeakers that could blow the windows off of whatever, it really actually makes that worse for someone that's hard of hearing and trying to hear. So that's kind of the main purpose of why we do what we do. It brings that value and it brings that intelligibility to someone. So that being said, about 4 or 5 years ago, we first started dabbling in our first generational Wi-Fi based system. So we've kind of gone on a couple different lines. Again, if you're familiar with us, you might have heard it kind of a couple different names that we've adapted to it. About 2.5 years ago, almost, we released Listen Everywhere. And again, the main thing is assisted listening and live applications. But you could take this basically multi-channel. So we've seen it in a lot more different applications than just your conventional assisted listening. In fact, if you looked at any of our brochures, and I know that Jim, a company that had that with this, we don't really say assisted listening until we have kind of the category. Whenever we talk about it, we talk about the description of personal listening. And I think that's profound because I think that goes into a lot more areas and that covers a lot more areas than just conventional assisted listening. We sold this into sports bars. We've been selling it into fitness areas where you might have a multitude of TVs. And obviously, if you're just in one spot, you're only able to bridge the audio or have the audio being sent through that one spot. So the fact that we have multi-audio, high fidelity stereo or mono audio available to the users, that's what this was. So kind of getting into what really was the premise of what brought us in today is even though we've had this for a couple years, and I'm grateful when I say that I work for a company that, in light of kind of what's happened to society in the last couple months, and everyone talks about the everyone's favorite term, the quote unquote new normal and what that's going to be, I'm grateful that we have solutions that can help bridge into a lot of different new types of technologies and a lot of new types of applications. So it was about 2 months ago when, for the first time, I got contacted for what it says on the slide, a drive-in worship. And yeah, at first I thought maybe it was just a couple houses of worship that were getting creative, that still wanted to be able to bring their parish and still have a service of some sort, but still adhere to the social distancing norms that we had, and still being able to have what the importance of going to church is having the experience, having that that experience of being able to bring everybody together and having that message be conveyed still. So suffice it to say, we're 2 months past into this, and this is still something that we're seeing every day. We're seeing increases for this every day, and it's utilizing the same technology that we already had on the market before. We didn't release anything new, or there's no technology updates to this. So that's kind of, again, first thing right off the bat, how impactful this is. In lieu of that, we've seen this continue into a lot of different new areas. So drive-in theaters and new gathering spaces, such as high school commencements, graduations. So anything where there's still, like I said, that principal effect of people need to still gather somehow. There's still a message that's being had. How am I going to hear that? And so being able to do this just through what we have in a smartphone technology is exactly what we've been able to see. So, and kind of what it is let me go back a couple of slides here. So, there's the one little box right there in the middle of the screen. As far as a listen technology standpoint, that's essentially all you need. And I'll get into everything else here in a minute, but realistically, the simplest way that I can convey that is what this box does is it takes any audio signal, converts it to over a Wi-Fi signal, and then you're able to kind of connect it to whatever network you want. So it's essentially an appliance that lives either on a network or standalone, but that bridges audio to a crowd or whatever your network is, and I'll get into that more in a second. But it really is just a single standalone audio device. So I don't want to get too much into the call. I want to kind of keep it high level today of how in depth you can get. Main intention of it is to be able to put onto an existing network. So if you're in Faith Baptist Church Wi-Fi, if you get within that realm, if you get within that network, ideally, that's exactly where you want your guests to be. And that's what I kind of talk about is most of the time I encourage it. Most of the time I tell people, if you have your guest SSID, your Wi-Fi network, that's where you'll want them to kind of live, or that's where you want this to live. So people have the easiest access to that. So as long as they're on the same Wi-Fi network as what you have the Listen Technologies server box connected to, this is exactly how it could be. I know when we're talking about drive-in and being able to put access points in parking lots, sometimes it might be better for it just to be a standalone network, and that's fine too. Once you actually hit Ethernet from our server into one of those access points, it creates its own IP address. So from there, you could create your own SSID. So it would be essentially the Listen Everywhere Wi-Fi. So you could instruct your whoever's coming into the parking lot at that point to just jump on the Listen Everywhere Wi-Fi. So you have the flexibility of having both, which makes it pretty easy, because I know when I discuss the topology of parking lots and access points, some houses of worship or some drive-in theater places, they already might have that infrastructure, or they might already be able to have the whereabouts of doing that, putting up that infrastructure. Sometimes though, it might be a little bit difficult. So if you just get that WAP, you put it in, you put the Listen Everywhere Cat5 directly into it. Obviously you supply power to the Listen Everywhere server. You'll be able to create that network itself as well. So one thing that I've heard about, and I kind of just wanted to touch about it for a second here too, is when we're talking about drive-in theaters or drive-in houses of worship scenarios, why would someone go this route compared to a standard FM system? There's a few reasons that we've already seen in the last couple of months of why you probably want to choose one or the other. First and foremost, what we see, and I'm going to really touch on this before because this is where this solution becomes very impactful, is our Listen Everywhere app is a completely customizable app. You're able to really take this from kind of ground zero and build it up to make it look, see, feel, shaped however you would like it. Because of that, that's where you get a lot of the kind of inclusivity. You get kind of a more immersive experience, a better experience overall. And then the other thing too is if you have your smartphone, you're able to get that high fidelity stereo audio. If you have Bluetooth tethered to your car, you could easily just have that being airplayed directly through your car stereo as well. So that's what we've been seeing is this isn't just FM, a low, and then as you guys know, FM quality, the frequency response on that, the fidelity on that. That's another thing is when you look at the difference of sound quality between the two, it's a night and day difference. The other part too is using conventional FM systems, even though there's a lot of different manufacturers out there that have type of standard broadband FM channels. And I'm not saying that the FCC is going around and snooping out FCC or different channels, but there's very few out there that actually fall within that FCC compliance. So again, it's not like I said, who knows how often they're regulating that or they're monitoring that. But that is a commonplace thing I've seen is the amount of legality that's referenced with that. So that's another reason why having to be able to deploy just your own kind of privatized network like that over a Wi-Fi really makes sense. So kind of talking about what the premise is here. Now I wanted to kind of just dive into a couple different things. I wanted to make sure first what it looks like to the user, and then we'll kind of get into, like I said, what's the actual hardware involved. Is it's pretty minimal here. So, kind of taking a step back, just thinking about the user here. So it's a free app that's available on any App Store or Google Play Market. So Apple iOS, Android. What's important to note, and we've made this backwards compatible to an extent for a reason too, because we realize a lot of houses of worship, not everyone has a smartphone. So what do you do to the ones that don't have one and we've seen a lot of creativity around it of people having donation drives or charity drives where you're able to donate your old phones. Because of that, this is backwards compatible quite a bit. So on Apple, it's back down to iOS 7, which was the iOS version that came out in 2012. And then Android is about the same thing. I don't remember exactly which one, but it's been quite. Android has a couple names. There's something like cheesecake, or I can look at it after this call, or you can let us know. But it's something where both of these levels are backwards compatible on devices and iOS platforms that are, like I said, 2012, 2013. So we wanted to make sure that that was compatible across basically any phone within the last 7 to 8 years. So completely free to download on that side. What you see here is kind of what it looks like once you launch the app. And again, what's critical about this is once you download the app, make sure they're on the same Wi-Fi network that this is on. So again, if you have the Listen Everywhere server connected to Faith Baptist Wi-Fi or Milky Way, which is a real thing that's happening on Milwaukee, for those that are from Wisconsin on the call. But make sure you're on the Wi-Fi network that's designated. So if you, like I said, if it's the guest Faith Baptist Wi-Fi, or if it's creating its own, as long as they make sure you're on the same Wi-Fi network as you access the app that the server is on, that's where you'll be able to get access to it, since it does reside on that network. So this is essentially what it looks like when it first opens up and when you launch the app. When you look at the channels where it says computer, flex room, music, TV, by default, when you do it without any customization, just out of the box, plug and play, that'll actually just have the channels. So it'll say channel 1, channel 2, or however many different channels you hook up, and it automatically detects. So if you only have one audio source, which is maybe just the program audio being sent or plugged into the server, it's only going to say channel 1. So it auto detects and then auto shows on the app. So that way you don't have people pressing through channels that are no concurrent audio being played through it. So that's the first tab. As you notice, there's 2 other tabs where it's right under the Listen Everywhere banner, and then right under the woman right there, and then on that third one. So there's 3 different tabs. This is where you could really start opening the customization to look and feel what you want. And that's what I said is, and I wanted to bring that up because again, this works completely just, you don't want to do any customization. You just want to say channel 1, let's hit channel 1 and we're good to go. It'll work in that sense. Then you could really start getting into how am I going to customize this and what do I want to be able to maybe present. At this site, at this page of it, you know, the app really starts turning into kind of almost a portable digital signage mechanism. So that middle tab there, it's compatible with Microsoft Office documents, PDFs. So if a house of worship wants to be able to upload the syllabus for events for the month or that sermon for the day, we see a lot of things that are like that. Or like I said, we've been seeing a lot of drive-in movie theater concepts. So they'll have the actual show times right there. So, you know, Shrek at 9 p.m. on screen 3. That's where they'd be able to see PDFs of what you would have. The last one where it says offers here on the far right, that's more towards, that actually is kind of where you could do HTML5 hyperlinks or JavaScript hyperlinks. What I mean by that is, especially how it pertains to House of Worship, what we've seen is if they want to be able to create a link that goes to a donation or charity drive that the church is using, and maybe it's on their website, maybe it's directly to maybe their PayPal page, they actually could hit the link and that's embedded, that you embed into this app, and it'll bring you directly to that page. So that's the power of a lot of this customization. And kind of what I opened up with at the beginning of the call is when you look at maybe typical FM versus Wi-Fi, this is a whole new level of being able to make everyone kind of, you know, you're going to have higher retention, you're going to have higher, you know, interaction when you have these certain levels of customization in the app. So we do have an audio settings and support. So basically what this means is it's just a little drop down that the user has some flexibility with. Audio really just makes it like if it's a stereo signal that's coming out, but they want it to be mono, that's fine. That's where you'd be able to hit that. And so that always goes back to the channels too. So even if they're in the middle of maybe a PDF following, you know, a scripture or whatnot, they'd be able to hit the drop down at the top left, hit audio, and go back to the audio channels at all times. So we have settings too, which will kind of control, you know, how much you want the app to last before it times out, or how you want your screen, how long you want the screen on your phone to last before it kind of goes to black, but still, you know, you can set it where you can make it so once it goes black, it won't play anymore, or you can make it so it's ongoing. You could set it to where, you know, if you put your phone down, it'll still run on the front home page of your screen as well. So that way, you know, sometimes people don't want it, sometimes they do. That's what that's there for. So kind of getting into the customization, I wanted to preface the importance of this before I start talking about what you can do. When we talk about customization of app, and how detailed or layered this could get. If you wanted to just be able to upload some imagery, some texts, name the channels, maybe even, like I said, put the PDF document for that. If you wanted to do something like that, when we talk about customization, this isn't a layered program that's required. This is a free, it's all run via our cloud service. So again, all this is still free. You would just register the serial number of the Listen Everywhere server with us. And once you get into that, you access it the same way as you would almost a home router. So you would physically just type in the IP address of that server, goes into the customization, and that's where you put everything. So to be able to do customization and have it appear to the users that are using it, this does have to have an active internet port. So meaning it always has to be able to have access to the normal internet, the way that we all know the internet to be. because it is pulling from a cloud service. So all that customization literally pulls online. So if you don't have access to that, you're just going to do, you just operate the app just basic. So, but pulling from the cloud, I mean, we were talking about you could go from 0 customizations to however you want it. I mean, it takes 20 minutes, 25 minutes. This isn't you have to get in and do API coding or programming or HTML coding. It's nothing like that. This is a drag and drop web GUI, and we make it as intuitive to follow as possible. And that's what I meant is someone that you could go into this and have this completely customized for your service in less than 25 minutes, half hour. So, and there's ongoing templates you could create too. So if you have an Easter template and you're going to plug it in for next time, or if you have a summer one, or whatever the templates you want to be able to create, you could actually have those saved. So once you fire that up and hit go on that template, it's going to set that up, and then you could go in and maybe change the words or the dates or whatever it may be. But that's how simple we wanted to make that as well. So that being said, there's a few different customizations here. Obviously, where you say the welcome ad, where it has the faith church, that's where you could do that. Probably the one that people take the most, customization effect to is the text banner. What's cool about the text banner is you could essentially do as many different sliding banners and imagery as you want there. In addition to that, you could set the timing of how long you want them to display. You could set when you'd like them to go. So in drive-in theaters, if that movie's going to finish at 9 p.m., they could hurry and send a push that says, hey, now that this movie's finished, here's your parking validation, or whatever type of messaging they want with that. So that's one thing that we see a lot of. And then kind of what I was saying is the custom channel naming and the content right there. So again, this is something where just a few minutes of time. And so we wanted here's a couple different examples of things we've seen too. Like I said, there's the calendar of events right there on the far left one. We still sell this into a lot of restaurants and bars and everything like that. So that's where they could upload the draft menu or a food menu. And then that last tab, that's the one that I was saying that's a little bit interactive, where you could put in a link that brings you somewhere. That's where we see on the fan appreciation night. So those are all things that we've seen. And again, it's something where when you look at the customization, the retention really, really increases tenfold just by being able to add a couple different imagery and a couple different texts. So, and I want to emphasize again, all free to be able to do this. So a couple slides ago, I mentioned the API coding and everything like that. So just wanted to know, so to this point, this is all the Listen Everywhere app. So this isn't another app. However, we do have an SDK kit available, which stands for Software Development Kit. This is obviously someone that knows a little bit, they have a little bit of background of API coding. It's usually someone that has maybe a couple designers or something like that on site. This isn't something where, I mean, truthfully, if someone gave this to me, I probably wouldn't be able to find my way around it, but it is also free. Like I said, if you have designers on site that know about API coding and things like that, the beauty of this is you can embed the Listen Everywhere part or bake it into an existing app. So I know that there are sometimes larger churches that have their own app. So this could be a revenue for them or an avenue for them to do. Talking about the AAA team, the Milky Way out of Milwaukee, what they're doing with that is they're creating their own app and they're baking this into that app, hopefully here in the future. It's not there today, but that is something that they're looking at doing. So just shows a little bit more of the versatility behind what this is. So now that we're talking about the app, I want to just do a couple more minutes just to kind of talk about what the server is or the hardware is. And I kind of hit it at the beginning of the presentation here is this is from a Listen technology standpoint, it's essentially one SKU. So we don't have a lot of different SKUs here. We have a rack ears if you want to put it in a rack, and then we have a venue awareness kit, which shows signage. But other than that, it's just the hardware. So we have a few different channel input sizes, but kind of the topology on the back is all the same. So we have a direct Ethernet, which is what you see on the LW100P there on the left-hand side, or the 200P, it doesn't matter. But it's all, so that's direct Ethernet from that unit into the existing network. You have your power, and then there's a USB port on the back of that. That's for a future development where if you want to house the customization of on a flash drive, and then you could just plug it in rather than having everything being pulled from an active internet source via the cloud. So that's why that's there. And then the other part is just the audio inputs. So we still have unbalanced RCAs there, but we wanted to also create a more balanced integratable product. So we have the balance input there as well. So within this is where you'd be able to do, so our most common one here obviously is that LW100P, because this is usually being sold in one channel or two channel configurations. So you could do one channel, two channels. So essentially after that, you could go, we have server sizes that are 4, 8, 12, and then 16. So we go all the way up to 16 mono inputs and all the way up to 8 stereo inputs off of that, which is what the one that you see on the right side there is. If you ever need more, it is possible to do more. All you'd have to do is just daisy chain additional boxes. So probably a little bit of overkill. I mean, we still sell this into a lot of museum spaces. So if there's 96 audio inputs, that's where we see that. And then within each box or server, you could house up to 1,000 different users. So a lot of versatility in that sense too. So, and kind of this is what it looks at the front. So we wanted to keep it really straightforward in the front. One thing that's really cool too is in the front middle there where there's the green light up button. So 1 all the way through 16. We have this in the front on the, you see just the 2 channels. It will auto detect. So that's an easy way if it is in a rack or if you just have it scattered a few feet away. That's where you'll be able to see, it will blink a green blinking light when it has an active input being sent into it. So that way you can know right there on the fly without checking the back of the unit if everything's live and everything's good to go. And then, yeah, so I wanted to kind of address a couple other things too that's really key with this. And this happened, and this kind of more pertains more so than just the drive-in worship applications or the drive-in theater applications we've been talking about. 2 goals with this system when we released it a couple years ago is multiple users and then low latency. So we wanted to address both of those square front right there. So with this release, what we were able to do is we were able to bring down the latency. On the slide here, if you look at our spec sheets, we say 40 to 120 milliseconds. I want to be able to address that because there might be some people on the call here that really that have live sound backgrounds, and when you say 40 milliseconds, because I did this myself too, the first thought was, oh my gosh, that's an eternity. But when you're talking about just being able to go through and if I'm in a crowd and I'm 40 feet away, if I'm 50 feet away from somebody, and it's up to my interpretation of what I'm hearing versus what I'm seeing. It's very, very hard, almost impossible, depending on where you're sitting. It is impossible to be able to detect that difference. So we are more than confident in that when we talk about 40 milliseconds of latency, that's going to still be a very ideal for live applications. And so again, this goes beyond just the live drive-in setup. This goes beyond once everything starts opening up again and people are able to start going back to their church the normal way. I wanted to be able to kind of hit on that because that's something where we kind of challenge it. You know, I say, okay, well, you know, I'm more than welcome to have you try it out and see. And we haven't had any unsatisfactory results there. Because this is an appliance that does live on the network, we do have kind of a best practices guide. So the main thing that you'll ever see a delay in the latency on this is if you're going through multiple levels of encryption, multiple hops, you know, you have to be on WPA as far as the encryption protocol, not WPA2, sorry. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but we have a best practices guide on how to get around that. So that's kind of what this is right here as well. But it's usually a lot of times when we start talking about networking and putting onto a network, you know, this isn't something where you're not creating a lot of bandwidth on this. Each channel only gets about 40 kilobytes per second. So as far as the bandwidth goes, or not per second, per user, sorry. That's not a lot of bandwidth whatsoever. So it's something where as long as that network is kind of an enterprise network level, you're not going to have any issues with the latency, with the quality, with even trying to get it on the network. So, um, so one other thing before I kind of start winding down here, and I kind of take this to heart too, just because I wanted to make sure that people are using this, that we want to get the word out the best way that we can, that this actually exists. And I've seen this, and maybe maybe I take this a little bit personally just because of my tenure here at Listen, but I know a lot of people that need some sort of hearing augmentation or assisted listening, or even just in the scenarios now in a drive-in scenario where they might not know that this type of technology exists. So they might not know that they have access to it, or they're able to have access to it. And so we want to be able to be as comfortable with being able to let the people that use this know that this exists as possible. So we've created a bunch of different types of QR codes. QR codes are the same thing to us as HTML links. So we actually have links. So a lot of the drive-in worships that we're seeing, they'll either send out an email before a service, or they'll have it on the home banner page of their actual website. That will be a QR code or a link that'll take them directly to the App Store to be able to download the app. So we want to be able to have that. We have that available digitally as well for free. And again, I stress this enough because the more that people know that stuff like this exists and they have access and they can be able to have that listening experience, that's what matters. And so we have a bunch of different ways where you'd be able to sync and basically have your guests or your sermon, whatever it may be, have the ability to just access the link and go and download the app. So it makes it pretty easy for that to be kind of distributed widespread here. So that being said, I'm going to kind of wind down here. So again, I see the question mark kind of flowing, so I think we have some questions too. But as I wind down, just if you still have any more questions, definitely feel free to pop those in as I go on. So kind of as a leaving remark of what I've seen, and I just wanted to kind of share a perspective because this is my everyday life with Listen Everywhere and the drive-in scenario. Even outside of that, we're still an assisted listening company. So the beauty of a setup such as this is it's still not that expensive to be able to set everything up and go. Our 2-channel server retail price is less than $1,000. If you have to put a couple of outdoor access points together, maybe a switch or two, that's still going to be less than $1,000. So in a lot of these scenarios, you could do this from nothing to being able to create that network to fill a parking lot area, a lot of times less than $2,000. So when I talk about how to create a new type of technology or meet a new demand such as this, it's not an expensive demand to do. And then the best part about that is essentially, this lives where your network lives. So once everything starts opening back up, if they have to promote social distancing, which I've been seeing where they're only going to allow maybe 20 people in the sanctuary space, but then they have a chapel down the hall and they're going to put 10 people there. I've been seeing a lot of that. This lives where that network lives. So people are still going to be able to hear that messaging all in unison. And that's kind of the point of why we have a technology like this is we don't want to segregate people that can't hear, segregate people that in a situation in this quote unquote new normal, being able to not be able to hear. So, and then even after everything's still deployed, we still sell this, like I said, in conjunction with video walls, assisted listening. As long as someone has Bluetooth on their hearing aid, they don't even need headphones to listen to this. They could just go Bluetooth directly from their smartphone if they have their hearing aid set up that way, directly into their hearing aid. So we see this as kind of the future of even kind of moving forward in how assisted listening for hard of hearing people are. We see this as that solution. We see this as the future there. So definitely keep us in mind. Like I said, Full Compass, they've been a great partner for us over the years with this. They know this very well. They've had a lot of experience with already selling this, whether it's just for assisted listening or in the drive-in area. So without further ado, I'll definitely put this back to Jim. I appreciate everyone's time today, and I think we'll open it up to some questions.
Thank you, Casey. Man, there's a lot of information there and a great solution to the world today, the new norm, as you said.
Yeah.
So I do have some questions here. One of them
Perfect.
being clarification. Uh, and I guess I come at this from, let's say, a house of worship type of angle, that you're going to have a combination of probably a drive, parking lot service, but also remote listeners from their home. Can this, obviously the system hooking it up, you limited to the router distance? Is that correct?
Good question. And so, yeah, that's what we see a lot of too. This kind of lives obviously on the network. So what we've seen is there's a lot of different outdoor access points out on the market, and you're usually going to get 150 to 200 feet distance away from an access point where you're in that range. So. And I kind of bring that up because depending on how they're able to do power, if you paint a picture and say house of worship opening up to a parking lot, um, I've seen most of the time probably two access points, outdoor access points, being able to cover an entire area that could be more than 100 cars. Just kind of depends on the topology of how they have that access point. Obviously, a lot of them are kind of unidirectional, not omni. So if you're going to point the access points towards the parking lot, that's where you see the best kind of focus of range. But yeah, that's a good point. Is because this does rely on the access points. That's where, like I said, 150 feet is what we see is usually the average. But some outdoor access points go for $200. Some go for $800. So obviously you will have some disparity on that. It's
Okay.
compatible with all the different ones though, so it kind of depends. And we have a little bit of a tech note on that we could provide. That we've actually tested a series of probably about 20 different access points ourselves.
Oh, no.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so if you guys need to look into that a little bit more, that's no problem.
So, and to confirm, you do not need access to the internet to run this system, correct?
Very good question. Yes, correct. So the only thing that access to the internet gives you is if you want to do customization. The reason I bring that up though is because I have seen a lot of scenarios where they say, okay, well, I don't really have the infrastructure to bring my home network out or my actual VLAN out. I just want to create a portable system for X amount of people. How do I do that? So you could just get one access point, not even with any switchers or anything like that. Because once you hit Ethernet into that access point, what it'll do is, it'll probably go more realistically, it'll probably go listen over our server into PoE injector and then PoE injector into that access point. It'll create its own IP address and then it'll essentially create its own network. You're not going to get, simple, you're not going to get conventional Wi-Fi off that, but that is a way to say, okay, I'm going to create a small sample Wi-Fi network for X amount of time so they could hear. If you're in that area, you'll be able to jump onto the listen everywhere network essentially and be able to listen. So we want to create that option for both. Is if you just need to do this, you don't care about internet access, you just need someone to hear. And then again, more commonly we see people put it onto the existing network, but it is a flavor of either or.
So you can push it to remote users out of their home.
Correct. Yep.
Yep. Perfect. That answers that question. Uh, so I do have another question. Is 1,000 users per server, correct?
Correct.
1,000
Yes.
users per server. That I don't know of any church that is going to, at least that I've been to, that you're going to run into that many, but per server, and that remains the same across the line, whether it's 2-channel or 16-channel.
So this very good point. So this is a good question. So uh, it doesn't matter on it's on our side. It doesn't matter. So what I mean by that is kind of what I was saying a minute ago is it's about 50 kilobytes per 50 kilobytes bandwidth per channel per user. So our box is capable of to 1,000. If you ever need more, then you daisy chain more of our boxes. But you do have to kind of have a little bit of a network allocation. So, and it's not a lot. So, at 50 kilobytes, the way that I say it is, if you want to allocate for say 400 guests or different clients, as they say, on the network. So 400 devices actually accessing it. You'd basically do the math of 400 users or clients times 50 kilobytes equals so that'd be 20,000 megabytes there. So still not a lot of allocation, quote unquote, but that's what they'd have to make sure is they have that allocation for.
So you can also, which is interesting, you can push out PDFs on the system. And I can see that for a
Yeah,
house of
yeah.
worship, that would be very handy if you wanted to hand out the song lyrics for the next hymn. Uh, the listeners could sing along as well.
That's perfect, and that's exactly you hit it spot on. So that's what we've seen in those houses of worship, especially in the drive-in. So, like I said, the drive-in before, or I'm at houses of worship before everything the last couple of months. They've really been utilizing that for just a calendar of events for the month. But now you could do, and you could do multiple documents, so you could still do that. But to your point, that's an easy. That's probably the simplest way to be able to hand out what that hymn would be if you think about it. So rather than having to hand out a bunch of worksheets or actually having other people touch other papers and everything like that, a good way to promote social distancing is exactly what you just said. That's a valid point, and they're able to do that.
That pretty much leaves the FM transmitter in the dust then.
Yeah, that's what we've seen. Yep.
So I do have a question here from John,
Okay.
and absolutely, I do not know the answer. Possibly you do. Uh, he says, "Can you confirm the phase loop still necessary for cochlear implants?"
Good question. So most cochlear implants, to my knowledge, not all of them, but most have T-coil. And so to answer the question is for phased array or induction loop systems to work, they have to have that T-coil present. Um, and the answer is yes, it definitely works as long as the cochlear implant has that T-coil, and it works the same way in the same condition as the typical hearing aid with the T-coil would also work. So they don't have to do anything special or other than same conditions apply to hearing aids where you usually have to turn the T-coil on. A T-coil switch is usually not automatic. It is a switch. The same thing exists within cochlear implants. But yeah, that's definitely kind of a clean way to be able to do that too in phased array systems.
So the one other question here from Alan, and I think this one is just has so many variables, but I'll throw it out there. The limiting distance inside a building, and now I would assume it's going to depend on what walls are made out of and everything. So on your best guess, what 150 feet still within a building, or again depending on the router?
So the biggest question of that, this is a good point. So the best part about that is this. So when you get into the network diagnostics and the configuration of this, you can specifically choose which access points you want this to hit. So essentially the access points for this act like beacons for the Listen Everywhere app. So to kind of answer that question full circle is you're going to get, so if you have, X amount of a network deployed with a few different VLANs within a house of worship, you could choose which VLANs those hit. So you could do, so for instance, usually there's going to be maybe, a couple access points that reside in the sanctuary space. There might be one in the lobby. There might be one in a daycare or cry room down the hall. So you could make it hit all of those, or you do have the ability to get into the configuration and make sure, oh, I only want this to hit just the sanctuary space. So it has that versatility. But I mean, to your point, what we've usually seen is, like I said, like 100, 150 feet on indoor access points is usually what we kind of see. Sometimes, depending on how the network's set up, they specifically limit the distance of the access point as well. So it kind of depends on if they're already doing that or if that's already present there. But yeah, I mean, the overall takeaway is you could choose which ones you want to hit or you want this delivered through as far as what access points you'd like, or you could kind of pick and choose. So
That's all we have for the questions, Casey. I guess Thank you so much. I mean, there's a lot of information here, and I can see how this is be a very valuable tool to have drive-ins in just about any building, sports bars, uh, health clubs. Another one
Absolutely, yeah.
that would be very helpful, and definitely houses of worship nowadays. So,
Yep, yeah, and that's again, I kind of hit it on in a second. This really is how we see the future of how assisted listening and just in general is going to be done, and even breaks into those fitness center environments and the sports bar environments of the future too. So that's why we have anywhere from just that 2 channel system all the way up to the 16 channel system as well. So kind of catering to every market there for sure.
well, I guess some questions are popping in here too. Maybe we'll get to these. Uh, what is the minimum equipment required to do a drive-in church using an audio mixer output?
So typically the minimum is, you have your mic, someone speaking into a microphone going into the mixer. You're just going to tap out mixer, like just a line output from the mixer into the either the unbalanced or balanced audio connection on the Listen Everywhere server. As far as the Wi-Fi, if they, like I said, if you want it just to have just to create a kind of a network just for that, you would just be able to put that into just one access point. So you could go and get a D-Link one from Target for $50 as long as it's dual band. You'd be able to set it up as much as that. Granted, when we're talking about just the D-Link home route, that's probably only going to get the bandwidth for probably about 30 users. You probably want to start at a low economic industrial grade WAP, which that gets about 150. But as far as your minimum, that's pretty much all you need is just the one access point and then just the one output from your auto mixer.
So for drive-in like concerts type of thing, you just need 2 channels to run that audio there, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yep.
Well, too, if they only want stereo. If they want mono just for spoken word, it's just the one channel that you would need
Okay.
there.
Then there was a question, what would the other channels be used for? Well, that would be it like the sports bar situation would be a perfect example. You got 16, 17 different TVs, different channels going on. Uh,
Uh, exactly. Yep. So what you would do the additional ones for houses of worship. Obviously, there's a lot of congregations out there that have interpretation. So if they have an interpretation feed going, that's where you do additional channels. More common than not is kind of what you said. Is we see this into sports bars and fitness centers where they might have 8 different monitors set up or television set up, and this is a way where people can pick and choose which screen they want to listen to. So to your point, Jim, that's exactly what it is. Most of the multi-channel deployments we see are in some sort of conjunction with a video or multi-video scenario setup.
so then the process, one last question, the process of getting a PDF onto that server and out to the whole listening audience.
Yeah, so once the server is registered with Listen, and all you do is hit support at Listen Tech, or your full Compass rep could do it on your behalf. But we will basically authorize, and that the only reason why we have you quote unquote reach out to us is just because we just authorize the serial number. But so that's all we do. It's not a huge waiting game. We do it same day. So once you do that, you type it, and then that's where you would go into your access point. And I did bring up something on the call or the presentation earlier, which is this is key too. So you type in the IP address of the server that brings you to so you launch the browser, type in the IP address, brings you to the admin portal. That's where you would create your username or password for the portal, and then from there, the screen itself is, like I said, it's usually just drag and drop type templates. So the process is you're going to have a screen. There's going to be a tab within the browser, the website of it itself, where it says it kind of gives you a live feed documentation. So when you're changing something, it gives you a live preview of what it looks like. So it's just all done kind of just a web GUI, drag and drop or upload files. So once you upload the file of the PDF, for instance, it'll give you a sample rendering right there on the page of what that would look like to the user. So kind of does it real time. What's key about this and this is what I was saying. I missed on the presentation, which was bad on me because this is actually a pretty cool port. What as long as this if you're doing the customization and this has the active internet pass through, how we're talking about, someone could do this and customize this remotely. So as long as the server, the Listen Everywhere server, is still having an active internet source, someone can log in from across the world, and as long as they have the admin and security bypass. But I bring that up because I see a lot of dealers that will do a weekly update to the church client's app that week. So that could be another way for people to kind of, if you want to have like a maintenance fee or whatnot, that's something they could do. But it's community to the church because they don't really have to worry about anything. They could just say, okay, here's this document that we had for the hymns that we're doing this week. Could you put this in? And that's something they could do. But I mean, that's what I meant is the process is I mean, it's really, really simple. It's a 20-minute process for sure.
I can see that connection would be great in a contractor situation, where if you're having difficulties, they can dive into it remotely.
Exactly. Yep. And
Um,
by all means, you also, like I said, you don't have to have. This is not something where someone needs to have a background in coding or design to do. As long as they know how to, the first time you'll have to hardwire the Listen Everywhere server into the computer via USB. And then after that, like I said, as long as that has internet pass-through, you'll always be able to type in that IP address and then be able to do the customization remote.
so this question is from Bruce, and I know you touched on it very, very briefly. The USB port, it's not
Yeah.
active now, is that correct? It's just for
Uh,
future.
Very good question. Yeah, so that is an update that's coming here in about a couple months. I think it's like 2 or 3 months. So again, and then what that will do is kind of what I said is so you could create all the customization, put it onto a flash drive, and then plug it into the back of that unit, and then that way they don't have to have an quote unquote active internet pass through. It'll just be right there, and so that's more common in remote situations. I brought it up because obviously there's sometimes, like I said, drive-in worship where that might be the way to go. So it's still a couple months out, but it is something that's on the
Okay.
list.
And I believe this is the last one. We've had a lot of good interaction here with everybody. So last one from Bob, just some clarification. You mentioned access points. By access points, do you mean routers?
Sorry, yes, routers. Yep.
Okay, that's pretty much it. I think we're good to go, Casey. Thank you so much. Very, very informative. We've hashed out a lot of different scenarios here and how this can be used. So I appreciate you taking the time today to talk to all of our customers here and present this to us.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, so much. Like I said, it's good that we're still being able to create new types of applications and still be able to provide a meaningful service to people. So, Jim, Full Compass, I appreciate your guys' help for putting this together, and yeah, let us know how else we could help move this along. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And one real quick last statement to everybody out there. When you exit, there is a very short survey. If you could fill that out, that would be very helpful for future webinars. Also, if you have any other questions, go ahead and email me at jripp@fullcompass.com. My name is Jim. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And this will end our webinar for today. We'll see you on the next one.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone.